A rainy day in Indianapolis, but it in no way dampens our enthusiasm. We are fired up to be here for the 13th ever Big Ten championship football game coming your way in this very stadium tomorrow. Welcome in Big Ten Today. We are presented by Gatorade. It is the Friday walkthrough, and we have a field on which to walk through. I mean, this is next level. Dave Revson, Nicole Auerbach, Jerry DiNardo.
Yeah, I think we could have done the show while walking to be really on brand, but that might have been a little complicated.
I think if everyone had the correct footwear, we definitely could have a real walkthrough.
The issue with walking through on this field is, you get the little rubber pellets. And then you're picking them out of the cuffs and the shoes for a couple days.
I'm still picking them out from last year, so they will be with us again.
You might want to take it to the dry cleaner.
I thought about turning my pants upside down.
Let's get into our big story. Iowa and Michigan meeting for all the Big Ten marbles. Second time in the last 3 seasons. Michigan unbeaten. A win would almost certainly put them in the college football playoff for the third straight season. Iowa 10-2. Were they to pull the upset, they'd earn a spot in the New Year's Six for the first time since 2015 when they played in the Rose Bowl. Michigan is a prohibitive favorite. As you certainly know, they're the biggest favorite in the history of this game. We're going to get into the X's and O's in a moment, so we'll save that for then. But just kind of big picture, do you see this game in that way? Do you see this game in kind of the mismatch that's being portrayed as?
I do, coming into this, because if you think about where they have the advantage, if you're Michigan, it's the defense. The defense has been suffocating. And so then you have to wonder, how is Iowa going to be able to move the ball? How are they going to be able to find the end zone? And that's where I go when I think about the mismatch, plus all the improvement we've seen offensively from JJ over the course of the season.
I think if you look back in the history of college football, if an upset like Iowa beating Michigan tomorrow, for that to happen, Iowa would have to probably win the turnover battle. In Iowa's case, probably the time of possession, which isn't really a big stat, but that's a big stat for the Iowa offense. How about special teams? Some really good things would have to happen in special teams, but no doubt Michigan's the big favorite. But you have those things that can happen in a game that are the anatomy of an upset, and that's what Iowa has to do to win the game.
They did play last year in Iowa City, similarly constructed Iowa team to last year. It was not a total blowout. It certainly was not a nail-biter at the end. They played 2 years ago, of course, here in the Big Ten championship game, and that was a blowout. Michigan pulling away in the second half. They won it 42-3. Let's get into kind of what's at stake for each one of these teams, and I outlined it a little bit with Michigan. To say this has been an unusual year for Michigan, I think, would be a little bit of an understatement. It's been an absolutely crazy year, and yet here they are in some ways seemingly impervious to everything that's been swirling around them. They're one win away from almost certainly playing in the college football playoff for the third straight year. Got to be focused, got to be ready to go, but I don't think we have any indication that they wouldn't be based on what we've seen this year.
No, every time that there has been a moment or a circumstance where they could have been flustered or they could have been caught off guard, they've played incredibly well. They've remained focused. They've played so many games without Jim Harbaugh, and that's where I think you go, because Jim Harbaugh is back, and that's going to be an emotional boost, but also a boost on the sideline in game, even though Sherrone Moore did a fantastic job against Ohio State. But this really is for everything. They will be in the college football playoff if they win this game for a third straight year, playing with a chance to get to a national championship game. This is what they've been working towards each of these last 2 years. They've been waiting to get back to this point so that they can do something that they haven't been able to do.
I think what's at stake for the players is a group of young people that have played flawlessly most of the year, 6 times without their head coach. A group of young people that, no matter what the distraction has been, no matter what people are saying from the outside, have just gone about their business. To keep a group of young people that focused, to be in position to win their third straight Big Ten championship without their head coach for 6 games. Think about that. With temporary coaches for the first 3 games. For all that swirled around, it's hard to keep a group of young people like that focused. And so credit to the coaches, but most of the credit goes to the team, how they've just reacted as if nothing has changed, that we haven't been through any crises, and the rest of the world is looking at this as a crises program.
Yeah, they've been incredibly steady. I feel like that's the word that I think about them. Consistent, steady.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm with you, Jerry. I find it amazing. I mean, I think it is a remarkable testament to these young people. It has a lot to do with the staff, too.
Sure.
And I think Sharon Moore, certainly these last few games, he's going to get a lot of credit for it. But I thought Jim Harbaugh did a really nice job at his news conference this week of kind of going through everyone who deserved credit for it, because this is, in some ways, an unprecedented situation. And for them to come through it seemingly as unfazed as they are, I think is really fascinating. I think it also speaks to they know what's at stake this year in terms of, look, this program hasn't won a national championship since 1997. They haven't won outright since the late 1940s. They are the winningest program in the history of college football. They're going to lose a lot off of this year's team next year. I think there was a sense at the very beginning of the year, we've been close twice, we are on a mission, and they're not going to let anything derail this mission, and that's how they played.
And if you think about it, we weren't sure. This time last year, is Blake Corum going to come back?
Right.
I don't think people thought that he was, but you had players decide to come back to be part of this season because of all the things you just said about how everything aligned for this particular team. And think about the way that we entered the season saying, hey, maybe Georgia's beatable this year. Hey, maybe there's some room up in the top echelon of college football. Michigan has been one of the most dominant teams in the country all season long, despite everything. And I think that they think they've got a great chance here. It's actually a wide open national championship picture. We've never had it this wide open heading into conference championship weeks. But Michigan knows when and they're in. They're one of the few teams that knows that.
But Nicole, even before we talk about Georgia, how about this being the first year? A lot of people picked Penn State to win it this year. A lot of people said Ohio State's going to rebound from losing the last two, and they'll never let it happen again 3 years in a row. There was more competition biting at the heels of Michigan, projected competition, than I think the first 2 years that they won it. And so, again, more credit to the Michigan group for fighting through those two challenges, which they did both very well.
Yeah, that is, again, the whole thing's remarkable to me. I mean, it really is incredible. There have been so many times along the way, certainly in these last few weeks, where you just thought, man, like, how can you sustain this? Because emotion gets you so far. But then there's all this, like, all that stuff matters, right? There's a reason Jim Harbaugh makes $10 million, right? Like, there's value in him being on the sidelines, and yet for them to play as well as they have without him, again, it speaks to all the things you guys talked about. What about for Iowa in terms of what's at stake here? And again, tangibly what's at stake is that New Year's Six game, as we know. But it feels like, again, no one is giving them a chance in this one. No one is saying, I think they're going to get there. So what, outside of, hey, if you do win, Jerry, if you do pull the monumental upset in the way that you outlined, obviously it becomes one of the most memorable seasons. But with everything they've been through, I mean, their adversity has been crazy, and it started from the word go. What's at stake here for them tomorrow?
Isn't it the same as what's at stake with the players at Michigan? I mean, this is the second most distracted team in the conference, right? Michigan's number one in the distractions, and then Iowa's 10-2. They fire their offensive coordinator, who happens to be the son of their head coach, and there's tears after game by coaches and players. This team has fought a typical West Division schedule and typical West Division games, close, low scoring, but the mental distractions that the Iowa team had to fight through, I think, is not the same as Michigan, but it's pretty close. And again, I think they're probably the second most distracted team that have found their way in the championship game.
No, it's an incredible feat that they've made it here. They've had so many injuries, especially in the offensive side of the ball, and there were already offensive questions. What I think is really interesting is, and what I think would be validated by a win here, would be Kirk Ferentz's methods. He says that this is a way to win college football games in 2023, and everyone else says, no, you need to be more explosive offensively, you need to do this, you need to do that, and he is playing complementary football. They are relying heavily on that defense, special teams, field position. And if they were to win and pull up the upset here, that's ultimate validation for Kirk Ferentz and how he wants to win games.
It's also validation of the way he wants to recruit, because when it comes down to play calling and what Brian Ferentz has to work with, it's about the Jimmies and the Joes, not the X's and the O's, right? But Kirk has decided to recruit a certain way since he took over, and it's worked. The recruiting has worked, as well as the X's and O's that they've tried to do and made them competitive in the West.
And I think it's fair to point out, this might have been a very different team had they had a healthy Cade McNamara from the start. He was injured in camp and never really seemed like he was 100%, and then went down several games into the year. Would it be different with Luke Lachey and Eric All? I mean, yeah, but
it wouldn't change their record.
It wouldn't change their philosophy.
It wouldn't change their philosophy, and depending on the call on Cooper DeJean, it may not have changed their record.
The record.
Right.
But I mean, like, just as a means of example, This team is averaging 247 yards of offense. That is the lowest in the Big Ten this century for any team in the Big Ten, and they're playing for the Big Ten championship.
10 wins.
And they're 10-2.
Yeah.
It was interesting. You were talking about Kirk Ferentz and you guys have brought up kind of this validation of their methods, and it was fascinating to listen to his news conference this week where he said something to the effect of the objective is to win the games. Isn't that the point of what we're trying to do? And almost not understanding why it would be
an issue
if
it's not aesthetically pleasing.
Right.
Yeah.
And to defend Brian Ferentz for a second, the defense is their strength. So, he shares in the responsibility to protect the defense a little bit. Most teams are built the other way, but these are the players he has been given. And so you can line up in the spread with the same players and be incomplete on 1st and 10 and be 2nd and 10 the rest of the day and put your defense in bad position.
I'll also give Brian Ferentz a lot of credit for continuing to coach and continuing to play through the rest of the season because he knows he's not coming back. They announced that mid-season, and yet here they have been with the offense doing what they need to do to win these games, and I think that's been impressive.
He and Kirk have handled the entire thing like consummate professionals, which I don't think surprises anyone. That is who they are. But yes, there's a lot swirling around both these teams. It's a fascinating matchup in that sense. Man, the two of you are rough, Jerry. This is like asking a valedictorian about the class they only got a 99% in. You're focusing on the negative of this fabulous defense. How do you see the matchup, Michigan's offense against Iowa State?
Well, I think the closest matchup in this game is the line of scrimmage on both sides, but especially on a Michigan offensive line that's very good going against an Iowa defensive line that's very good. And so Michigan's going to have their hands full with all their blocking schemes and everything that they do because Iowa really will contest every single block that they come. They do a great job of penetrating. They'll twist. They will give Michigan offensive line, Nicole, a moving target sometimes, and then the next 10 plays they'll just try to get leverage, and then you'll get a moving target. And that's one of the ways that the Iowa defensive line has made big plays this year. And so to me, again, the fairest fight of all in this game is the Michigan offensive line against the Iowa defensive line.
Yeah, strength on strength, absolutely. And Michigan in that offensive line, it's set up quite a bit for them, right? We've seen them in short yardage run situations where Blake Corum is essentially automatic from inside the 5-yard line. But you've also seen J.J. McCarthy improve as a passer and really kind of stretch the field a little bit. We saw some fantastic throws in the Ohio State game, but I think also we saw just in general, last year it was a lot of short to mid-range passes. Right. He's averaging a deeper ball this year. It's not like anything's been crazy, but if they need to win this game with the pass game, he certainly can. He's developed chemistry. Roman Wilson, Colston Loveland, he's got his weapons. So that offensive line is key for both pass protection and the run game that they pride themselves in.
Yeah, no doubt.
I think the challenge here for Iowa is as good as their defense is, and you guys mentioned 18 plays of 20 yards or longer allowed. Not only is that the best in the country, it's not even close. But what's crazy is second best is Michigan. It's 29, so 11 more, significantly more. But again, they're really good on defense too, and kind of therein lies the rub. We have outlined obviously all year. Anyone who's watching this show knows the struggles of Iowa's offense. We talked about earlier in the show. It's hard to look at that part of the matchup and see any kind of advantage for Iowa.
This is the part that's the most concerning, right? If you're rooting for a good game, you want this to be close because you want to figure out a way that Iowa is going to be able to move the ball on Michigan. I think the biggest key is obviously going to be to run the ball effectively as much as they possibly can, but it's really just about sustaining drives. You cannot put your defense in a situation where you're going 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out, and the defense has to continue to go on the field. I think that's really, really important, especially early in the game, Jerry, is to stay on the field so that you give your offense a chance to make something happen or set up field goals, whatever, just to get yourself on the board.
The issue, Nicole, is how do we define efficiently run the ball? In normal circumstances on 1st and 10, efficiency is 4 down, 4 yards or more. It's going to be hard for Iowa to run the ball consistently and gain 4 yards or more against the Michigan defense. That's just reality. Then you say, okay, well, we're being too conservative. Let's throw the ball. Only thing worse than 2nd and 7 is 2nd and 10. So it impacts your run-pass ratio. So the person, obviously, who has the toughest job come tomorrow is Brian Ferentz because he's got to put his team in position to win the game, complementing the defense, and it all is is going to start with those 15 to 20 first and 10 plays. If he's 40% efficient on first and 10, that's going to be a long day for Iowa. But if he can get close to that 50% without being second and 10 because he's trying to mix it in the run, again, that's the toughest job in college football in a normal day. The play call is the toughest job in college football, tougher than the head coach. But when you're calling plays for Iowa against the Michigan defense, I'd say that may be the toughest job of any offensive coordinator this year in college football.
Yeah, I mean, second and long, third and long, those would be a problem situation.
Right.
They would be, especially given how good Michigan's secondary is. They lead the Big Ten in interceptions. We've seen Deacon Hill make mistakes. I think the one thing you take solace in, if you're Iowa, is you haven't needed that much this year.
Like one play. Like one play. One big play.
It's one play. You rely on your defense. They're 9-0 when they rush for more than 100 yards.
Special teams,
Yep.
right? And not having Cooper DeJean hurts there, but
Yeah.
you're number one in the nation in net punting. I mean, there's stuff that you do really, really well, and you cannot make mistakes. I think it really comes down to cannot make mistakes. You have to punt. You can't give them the ball on an interception on a short field, and that'll be the challenge, no doubt, for the Indiana acting quickly to replace Tom Allen yesterday, announcing the hiring of Kirk Cetti. Cetti, coming from James Madison, has led the Dukes to a 52-9 record in his tenure. Includes 19 wins the last 2 seasons, transitioning from FCS to FBS. They've been ranked 7 weeks over the last 2 seasons. For some perspective, consider the Hoosiers have been ranked 13 weeks over the past 30 seasons. With Cignetta's 3rd head coaching stop, he's already been the coach at Indiana of Pennsylvania. 6 very successful seasons there at a school his father, Frank, coached for 2 decades. Did a quick turnaround at Elon, improving their win total by 6 games in his first season there. Has plenty of Power 5 experience as well, including time on Nick Saban's first staff at Alabama. And Kirk Cetti joins us now. It is time for our big interview. Coach, we are thrilled to have you with us. You win the Hustle Award here because I know you're being introduced to the news conference formally in Bloomington a couple of hours from now. What made this job appealing to you? Because you had a good thing going at JMU.
I had a great thing going and loved the people. But this was a challenge. In life, you got to make hard decisions. You only grow when you're uncomfortable. I'm too young to quit growing. I've had turnarounds in terms of records that were worse than this. And it's in the Big Ten, which right now, Big Ten and SEC 1 and 2, right? So it's doable. You know, we got a blueprint and a plan. You do it with people, and looking forward to it.
What is the formula at Indiana? Kind of as you envision what you think this can look like a year from now, 5 years from now, what do you envision?
I mean, the formula is the same as if I was sitting here as Michigan's head coach. It's recruiting, development, retention, and having a blueprint and a plan, hiring good people, recruiting the right kind of guys, and improving them on a daily basis. And we're process-oriented, and really it's not going to change much from what we did at JMU and what we did at Elon or any other, or at Alabama.
And when you think about what you guys did at JMU, it was so impressive to be so prepared to make that step to jump up so quickly. What do you take from that experience that you can take into Indiana?
It's validation that the process works and our way of doing things work, and I'll hire a good nucleus of guys from that staff, and the philosophy on how we do things won't change much. Everybody wants to improve their processes daily, right? You don't want to do things the same. You want to continue growing, or you're getting caught and passed up. So, the key is you got to get it done now, and avoid complacency, have a sense of urgency. And in my situation right now, we got to get a lot done in a short amount of time.
Coach, what are the real positives to the Indiana job?
I think the positives are it's a beautiful campus. It's in a great conference. I think when you look at what we have accomplished offensively, we've led the conference in scoring every year. We've had every quarterback, 4 different guys in 5 years have been player of the year in the conference on offense. We've had 2,000-yard receivers. Defensively, we're number 1 in the country against the run. We're number 1 in the country in sacks. We're highly rated in TFLs. So the way we do things is proven over time. Now we got to go out and recruit the right kind of guys.
Coach, I want to ask what it was like to be on Nick Saban's first Alabama staff and starting to build what would ultimately become a dynasty. What do you learn from that?
I learned so much. I mean, my dad was a Hall of Fame coach, so there's a lot of him in me. But after 1 year with Coach Saban, I had learned more about being a head coach, how to run a program than the previous 28 years, and it was a great experience.
What were some of those things?
I mean, it's the 12-month calendar, how to manage your staff, how to lead, messaging to the players, how to practice, philosophy for winning the game, recruiting philosophy, evaluation philosophy, how to avoid complacency. You got to stock complacency on a daily basis because the margin between victory and defeat is so slim in this business. And he was really good at that.
Tell us a little bit about your dad. Again, a Hall of Fame coach, as you said.
Yeah.
He was at IUP as you were
Right.
too, and we can talk about the time there. But what's it like? You grew up in a coaching family. Your brother's a well-known coach in college football.
Yeah.
So give us a sense of kind of the
Yeah,
coaching family.
you know, my dad was a leader, led by example, strong values. You know, he's helped a lot of people in life. And went with Bobby Bowden to West Virginia in 1970. I was in third grade, so I was always on the sideline in the locker room, knew then I wanted to coach. So, my dad was a role model. And I never coached for my dad, never played 1 year for my dad. So, he was a great man.
Let's go back to recruiting, if you would. Talk about recruiting high school.
Yep.
Before we get to the portal.
Yeah. Okay.
Philosophy.
Well, hey, I mean, look, a lot of good players out there, right? My thing is recruit guys with character, a foundation of habits. You know, it's all about recruiting and development, not retention, obviously, right? So I like performance over potential. You know, I'm old-fashioned. I'll look at the transcript, see how many absences are on the transcript. Those are the kind of guys I want, right? Because here's the deal: you getting 11 guys doing their job, it's not addition, it's multiplication.
Is there a percentage portal as opposed to high school?
I think everybody's turning over at least 30% of their roster nowadays.
Really?
I mean, it's an NFL free agency. You got to thrive in the portal. We're going to thrive in the portal.
When you were talking earlier about like the style of play and just how, especially defensively, how much havoc you guys wreak. Just describe both sides of the ball, what Indiana fans can expect to see next year.
Fast, physical, relentless. You know, a team that plays hard one play at a time. Try to play every play like it's nothing, process oriented, so you can win those close games at the end, right? Stop the run, explosive plays. But our teams really have played smart, disciplined, and we've been the least penalized team in the league the last 2-3 years, which wasn't the case when I took over at JMU. They had won a lot of games at JMU, but they were like the old Oakland Raiders. Okay, so you know our guys, they play hard and physical.
Where are you building a staff?
I'm probably 70-80% there.
Okay.
Now, I know you're going to coach JMU through their bowl game, and it's been a great story this year with you guys kind of fighting to get the
Right.
possibility to play in a bowl, and certainly admire your dedication to finishing that off with those guys. How are you going to balance your time?
I mean, it's going to be 90% Indiana. I'm going to be at the bowl game. I may be there a day or two before the bowl game. Jeff and I agreed, let's be nimble on our feet. They hire a new head coach, and maybe I'll be there, but I'm not going to have much of a role in preparation.
Now, Jerry still has shorts that he got when he was a GA at Maine in 1975. Do you still have do you have things that say Indiana, like from Indiana, Pennsylvania, that you can just swap out and wear?
I got stuff from Pitt with,
Coach.
Johnny Majors.
Right. Thank you.
Right? I work for Johnny Majors and have stuff from Pitt.
Right.
So we're normal. These people change and buy new clothes. I mean, the ones back in the day, my main clothes aren't worn out. Why not? Why would it?
Right. Okay. Yeah. So does the what's the color scheme at Indiana, Pennsylvania? Are you going to be able? I mean, will
it's
people
almost
know?
the same as the Hoosiers.
Really?
Almost.
Oh, this is great.
Yeah.
Did you
This
already?
is your dream.
All
This
you
is
do is change logos if the rest of the material's okay.
Well, one of my favorite things to ask: did you own that tie, or did you have to go run out and get a red tie?
I own this tie, but I probably haven't put it on in about 12 years.
Because I love that coaches have to get the right. You got to change out your whole wardrobe. No more purple.
yeah, like Jonathan Smith had no green in his wardrobe. You know
Right,
that,
right,
I mean,
right.
playing against Oregon. So this works out great for you.
Oh,
If
absolutely.
nothing else,
when
all
you've been
the
doing
gear.
this as long as we
Yeah.
have, you got all the colors.
Coach, we do really appreciate you taking the time out to do this. Good luck making it down to Bloomington. Got to tell you, the drive can be dicey at times, as Jerry can attest to.
If a GA can't get you from Bloomington to Indianapolis in 35 to 40 minutes, he shouldn't be a GA. just as you go recruiting in Indianapolis.
I'll tell you what.
I mean, set a good bar for the drive.
I figured I had to make this trip up here since we'll be playing in this game next year.
Oh, I like that.
I like that.
I like it. Are you willing to go on record with that prediction?
I am on record.
All right. All right. Well, that's beautiful. All right, which end zone do you want to be painted in?
Either one.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You're not picky. Kurt Cignetti, congratulations. We're
Appreciate
thrilled
it.
to have you in the conference. We look forward to working with you. And thanks so much. Seriously, thanks for hustling up here and hustling back. Means a lot to have you on the set with us.
Great to be here. Go Hoosiers.
The chance to play for 3 straight Big Ten championships means a lot to me. You know, 3 straight, we'll go down in history.
It's a chance for a three-peat, you know, is one of the best opportunities I've ever had in my life.
At the end of the day, our job isn't finished yet. That's not why these boys came back. We did that the last 2 years. We beat Ohio State. We won a Big Ten championship. We just got to keep fighting, keep striving to get better every single day and see where we end up.
The opportunity that we have in front of us, not only to have done it once, twice, but 3 times. You know, we love that opportunity. We need that.
A lot of people thought we couldn't do it, you know, but we believed in one another. And, you know, to go 3 straight, it's going to be a great feeling.
What a day it should be tomorrow. Big Ten Tailgate coming to you live from Indy. 2 full hours to set the stage for the Big Ten championship game between the Hawkeyes and Wolverines. Coverage begins at 2 Eastern. Is presented by TIAA, only here on the Big Ten Network. I need X factors for the game from both of you. Let's start with you and the Hawkeyes.
Okay, I'm going to say a wide receiver. And I know that sounds like a lot because we've been talking about the importance of the run game. But Caleb Brown says he's 100% healthy. He's back. If they need to make a big play in the pass game, he could be the guy that catches it. He has had 119 yards in the last 3 games. He's been a factor in the offense. And I think that obviously the run game opens up the pass game, but this is a player to watch.
I talked earlier about the defensive line and the defense of Iowa. I think Aaron Graves, one of the guys representing all of the defensive line, I think they, because it's such an equal matchup, they can really make a difference, maybe more so in this game than any other games they've played so far.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting when we talked about Iowa and can they avoid being behind the chains. You know, the same goes for Michigan, obviously. I mean, they still are at their core a run-first team, and we know how good Iowa is defensively. If you can put them in a situation where they've got to throw the ball, and if that defensive line comes through in the way that you're hinting at, Jerry, that could make the game far more interesting. What about for Michigan? Where are you guys going there?
I'm going to take Donovan Edwards here, and I don't think he's had the type of season we necessarily thought he would. He hasn't gone over 100 yards in any game this season, but he is someone who has been a factor. He threw a pass last week, right? We didn't see that coming, but he's also someone who can be a factor as a pass catcher, and I just think he's got so much speed. You can get the ball to him in space. He could still break off a big play, and so I think even though Blake Corum's the guy, and even though they've got go-to receivers, Donovan Edwards can be that type of X factor.
I'm going to go with a guy who's been missing for the last 3 weeks, returns as a starter, Jim Harbaugh. And I think he is a very emotional leader. I think one of his strengths as a leader is the individual relationship. And you talk about, could Michigan be flat this week or tomorrow because they're a heavy favorite? I think Jim Harbaugh is going to give them an emotional lift, even though you think that maybe Michigan would just show up and think they could win.
I got to say, I'd be astonished if they're flat. And
Same.
But I think, like, when you outline the possibility, of course, right? Like, that's the kind of natural inclination of 18 to 22-year-olds. You see, well, we're a heavy favorite, and they've got all kinds of issues. And so I think kind of in a normal situation, I'd be terrified of it. But, man, this team, it kind of like we talked about at the top, this team just seems like they're impervious to that kind of stuff and wired differently.
And there's science about it, right? I mean, if Michigan takes the ball on offense and drives right down the field, is that a good thing that they just went right down the field? Or now that they think,
now we've got this
now
thing.
we've got this thing. Or if they get stopped, is it a sign of being flat? I mean, and I think obviously that's the head coach's job to figure this thing out. If he needs to say, hey, Especially to the play calls. Hey, this could be a little stickier than maybe we think.
But I think it's to your point, and the reason you made him your X factor, right? They have been so emotional about how much he means to their program. They have played really hard for him, dedicated these wins to him. So I imagine they're going to play really hard for him.
You would think. Right.
Yeah.
No,
like
I hear you.
I think that's why it's not going to be a factor.
You have to think about if it doesn't go the way you want it.
Yeah.
Or the way it should go. You've got to be able to make those adjustments on game day.
And the other side has something to say about it too, right? I mean, Kirk Ferentz knows what he's doing. I think that we have seen this through the course of many years. This guy is on pace, if he sticks it out, to become the winningest coach in Big Ten history. And so Iowa can throw a wrench into this, Jerry, for sure.
No doubt. They have good players. I mean, they do. The ugly offense, a good defense, highly motivated team, and they know how to win. And they've been here before.
They have. They're going to have to keep it close early because I think that's where you worry about the game getting out of hand. And you've got to be able, again, to possess the ball, eat some of the clock, so Michigan's not on the field the whole time.
So this is the end of our show.
And we're going to be here to see.
We are going to be here. That's what I was going to say. It is by no means the end of our coverage. We're going to have Jim Harbaugh on the big show later. We're going to have Big Ten Tailgate coming up tomorrow. We're going to have post-game coverage as well. We are the place to be for coverage of this game throughout the weekend. We will see you a little bit later here from Indianapolis.